Good morning, my creative friends. This is Dr. Minette Riordan, and this is Painting in Your PJs with Minette, where I am here creating live Monday to Thursday, most Mondays to Thursdays at 7 a.m. Mountain Time. And I am super passionate about showing people how to use creativity as a process, not a project, as a focus for personal development and personal growth. And I especially love working with people at midlife who are really feeling a sense of maybe having lost their purpose or trying to figure out what's next for them in their life. And throughout the month of December, I have been working in a handmade end of year reflection journal, really taking time to sort of focus in on where I've been, where I want to go throughout the year. And that sort of culminated yesterday in some writing, journaling, mind mapping about how do I want to enter 2023? What's the energy that I want to bring, the focus that I want to bring? I've used a lot of mixed media, a lot of collage. And one of the prompts from my end of year reflection questions was, what would you name your emerging self? And I love this question. And so what came to me was the traveler, in this sense that life is a journey and that I'm on a quest. And I came up with her guide to her journey, which was to travel lightly, wear a big smile, to take compassionate action, to not to travel alone, but to really be in the joy and the energy and the magic of people traveling with me. And I had been sitting with the word discernment and I was looking up quotes about discernment. And I found this beautiful quote by Joan Halifax, who was a Buddhist. Having a froggy throat this morning, I apologize. And so I did some research, and I know you can't see this quote, but Joan Halifax wrote that compassionate action emerges from the sense of openness, connectedness, and discernment you have created. And those two words, compassionate action, really struck me as this is how I want to enter into the year. This is how I want to be in relationship with myself, with nature, with the world, with spirit, with family, with my business. And then I started to think about what do I need to support me in really living out this idea of compassionate action. So I went back to kind of some of these words and concepts to my mind map. I thought a lot about, the journaling and the art that I had created. And I realized that what I wanted was to create a deck of cards, almost like a personal oracle deck with some of the words that I feel like are really connected to this idea of compassionate action, something that I can leave sitting on my desk that I can flip through as needed. And so these were the words that really struck me. And so I just got into Canva, picked a pretty font, printed them out. I love using printed words on Oracle decks because I feel like it creates actually a congruence, but a cohesiveness. And this word list may not be complete. It's not a core values list, but there are a lot of my core values that are on this list. I love doing a lot of work with core values, and I didn't even like think about the number of the words. I just started writing words and I think I ended up with 10 words. So I'm going to create 10 cards today using these words. And towards the end of last year, my son and I started a wonderful program called the Mindful Patterns Membership, which is all about mindfulness and mandalas and coloring and using affirmations to just be present, to be here now with ourselves. And so over the last few months I have colored a lot of these. I'm popping into the chat the link to that program. And so I always think about how can I repurpose my, oh, it looks so shiny. How can I repurpose, excuse me, my art? How can I repurpose my own art? And you can see I've colored a lot of these. Some of them I've journaled on. This one was particularly pretty. So I think one side of my cards, I'm going to repurpose some of these mandalas from the Mindful Patterns membership. We don't call them mandalas, we call them sacred circle designs, and we explain why in that program. But I think there is so much value in repurposing our own art. So I think I'm going to cut these up and have them become one side of my Oracle deck, and I will figure out that a little bit later. So I have my cutting mat and an X-Acto knife for that here, but I'm going to start with some fun, just abstract mixed media play on this set of cards that are going to end up being the holders for these words. And so the first thing I'm going to do is going to come in, and I'm just using inexpensive 3x5 index cards. These are a great substrate for just playing on. I could have cut some mixed media paper as well. Why am I seeing the tip of my, just adjusting my hover cam. I was moving things around yesterday. Not sure why we're seeing the end of that today, but not that it really matters. But if you're wondering what this little tip is right here, this green is the end of my stand that I have my hover cam on. But index cards are great. You could really use any paper for this at all, any mixed media paper, old journal paper. Something a little stiffer, cardstock would be a great thing to use as well. Good morning, Marion. Nice to have you here as always. So this morning I am creating a deck of sort of personal oracle cards with some words that are going to help me live out my word of the year, compassionate action. So to be in compassionate action, I need openness, connectedness, discernment, simplicity, alignment, congruence. Those are similar, but I was thinking about it. They're a little bit different. Loving kindness, respect, choice, and direction. So these are the words that came to me this morning. I may add to this deck, but I want it to be something that's just meaningful, something that I can sit on my desk. I love working in this small format as well. And I'm going to start with some black gesso this morning because it just creates a really cool effect. Get things out of the way that I don't want to get paint on. It creates a really cool effect. And there's catalyst wedge. Even though I'm going to end up covering up a lot of this, when we start with the black, we get a really different effect. And I don't care if I cover the whole thing. These are going to curl up a little bit. You can also take some washi tape or masking tape and tape them together. Good morning, Blanca. Me too. I'm kind of excited about the direction I'm going to go with this because I notice for so many of us, you know, when we come to the end of the year or the beginning of a new year, and it's fun and exciting, and everyone's sharing their word of the year on their social media. And I always get curious about how do you remember? How do you remember? Marion, black gesso is the bomb. It's super cool, creates cool effects, works great with bright colors and metallics. I also like clear gesso, so it's worth having, smaller containers of different kinds of gesso because they do create different things. And I just want kind of a thin layer on here. I am just spreading this with a palette knife, but this idea of being able to remember our word of the year. We've put time and intention into selecting the word. We have a reason in the moment that we pick that word. And like other things that we do at the beginning of the year, how do we stay present and focused? How do we stay present and focused? I read this great article recently, and I don't even remember who it was by or where I was reading it about the number one reason that people have gotten so opposed to goal setting is because they're setting themselves up for failure, and that fear of failure stops us from setting goals. But also, I think after 20, I think this is my 22nd year as an entrepreneur and business owner, I think that people set unrealistic goals for themselves. It's kind of like at the beginning of the pandemic, I saw so many people said, "Oh, I'm going to use all this extra time to get fit. I'm finally going to write that book." And none of those things happened, right? Life took over. Life was so different. Nobody knew what to expect. I certainly didn't have a lot of, extra time. Now, I've never had to commute to work, and I can only imagine for people that normally have to commute to work what a gift it was to be able to work from home. And for others, it was probably really hard to work from home. But my point is that we tend to set outrageous goals instead of attainable goals or even intentions. And we have to be in the energy of creating something that we can hold on to and that will support and sustain us throughout the year. All right, super fun getting that black gesso down on the page. And I am certainly my own best case in point. I've been saying for a couple of years now that I want to write my next book. And, I've taken a couple of shots at it, but it's never sort of all come together. And I think it's because my own ideas were still developing. And so rather than saying, I'm going to finally lose that X number of pounds, or I'm going to exercise every day, or I'm going to write that book, or I'm going to blog every day, or make art every day. Be less extreme in your goal and intention setting. And when you think about a word of the year, how is that connected to your goals? How will it help you shape or reach your goals? How will it help you live or feel how you want to feel throughout the course of the year? Okay. So these definitely need to get a little bit dry. So I'm going to mute myself for just a second, hit these with my dryer so you don't have to listen to my dryer. So bear with me for one moment. Good morning, Allie. Fun to see you here. Happy holidays, my friend. I am creating a set of cards this morning, just working on inexpensive index cards. They're a super fun process to work on, or a substrate, sorry, to work on. Got those more or less dry, and now I'm just going to have some mixed media fun on these. I kind of have a few different things that I love to start little pieces like this and start layering up the color. What I don't have over here any stencils, so I might have to grab some stencils, but I'm going to start with just some oil pastels, which are great for mark making. I'm going to get some of these nice bright colors. And some of these are Carinda Ash Neo pastels, but most of them are just inexpensive Pentel oil pastels. They're great for creating these underlayers with. I was looking to see if there was a brighter yellow, but we'll start with these. And I'm going to come in and just start making some of my favorite marks on the cards. No rhyme or reason to these, just coming in, having some fun, putting some marks down. It's kind of fun to work across. If you tape these on the back, you could work on them as a whole set, which is kind of a fun thing to do as well. Great trick that I learned from my friend Andrea Shebelou from A Work of Heart Studio. So again, just coming in, putting a little bit of color down. Again, these first layers are always fascinating because they may or may not show later. We may or may not see them. There's some fun ways to bring some of that color back again. You can kind of just put them all in a pile and work on top of them. But I'm creating a deck of cards with some different words that will support my word of the year. I realize that my word of the year, which is compassionate action, I started asking, how will I remember? How will I live this out? Which led me to this idea of creating some cards that would help me remember, that would help me remember. Again, I'm just having fun with these oil pastels. I could literally spend so much time just playing this way, adding color to a page. Even in my journal, some mornings I just sit down before I do my morning pages and just add color to a page. It's amazing how calming and satisfying it is to allow ourselves to just color and scribble on a page, to color and scribble on a page with no rhyme or reason. We don't need to know what it means, but there's something about allowing ourselves some freedom to play in a very childlike way that really sort of nourishes our spirit, allows us to get past kind of that fear of the blank page and just start putting some marks down. And I love using the black gesso as the starting background instead of white gesso. It creates a very different look and effect. It definitely makes for messy hands, but the colors really pop on this black gesso. And so I'm just repeating the same shapes. You can see I have shapes that I tend to be drawn to And so notice, what shapes are you drawn to on a regular basis? Do you tend to use the same ones over and over? And this is how you sort of begin to create your own dictionary of marks, I like to call it. To create your own visual language is by noticing shapes, designs, and patterns that you're drawn to. What are the shapes, designs, and patterns that you're drawn to? What makes your hands happy to draw? What are the things that just, you kind of over and over again turn to? And sometimes I have to work hard to create something different and not just constantly repeat the same patterns over and over again, but to try to put some variety into things. But it's like when I was learning Zentangle, there aren't that many different shapes and lines. And they're all quite similar and have the same points of origin. And it's how we combine them that makes them unique, right? That makes them unique. In fact, in Zentangle, they talk about if you can draw an I, a C, an O, and an S, you can create all the different patterns just with those different shapes, right? And we can combine these into becoming other things, right? But we just keep playing with those same lines over and over again. And it's amazing the amount of creativity that lies within us that we don't even recognize. All right, so having some fun just getting some color down on all of these pages. So Blanca and Ali, have you guys considered a word of the year yet? Do you have something that you're thinking about? I know Marion shared hers yesterday as well. And one of my friends had posted something on Facebook that I thought was very interesting. She is a successful business owner, and she was talking about how she always picks a word for her business to guide the year or a phrase, as well as something personal. And I put some thought into that because I always value her opinion. And I realized that for me, interesting, the pink doesn't show as well on the black. But I realized for me that I want them to be the same, that I don't necessarily separate out my life and my business, and that it felt important to have something that would be a guiding principle for every aspect of my life, for every aspect of my life. And so I really put some thought into and did the mind mapping that some of you saw yesterday around how is this going to support every aspect of my business. Okay, I'm going kind of crazy with the oil pastels here, but it's so much fun to do. But would love to hear if anyone else has a word of the year that they are inspired to share. And all these techniques that I'm using could be done on a journal page or a canvas. What I love about working on index cards is, they're so inexpensive and disposable. It takes a lot of fear out of this kind of creative play when we can just give ourselves permission to work small and to work on something that isn't so precious isn't so precious. So Ali, if you guys don't know Ali from Vintage Page Designs and the Handmade Book Club, she teaches people how to make these gorgeous journals. And I hear over and over again that people don't want to work in them. In fact, I have a new client that was here in the studio, and one of the things she said was she had all these journals, beautiful. Somebody, I think maybe in France or Italy, she bought this gorgeous handmade book from, and she brought it to use for our coaching work together. And the first thing I did was make her just put some paint on the first page so she could get over that feeling of this is too precious to create inside of. And so index cards are a great way around that, or a great way around that. Okay, I think that is enough oil pastel for now. So I'm going to come in and start adding some paint right over the top of that, some patches of color. And I'm going to just stick with this, whole month I've been kind of really focused on playing with primary colors. So I'm going to stick with my primary colors today, plus maybe some green, or I might make some green. And these are even some of the same colors. Imagination, layers, those are great ones. I love that. So very, very different and yet connected, imagination and layers. So I think maybe let's stick with the same colors I used with the oil pastels and start with these and see where we get to a little bit. And these are shades of primary colors, right? I have a shade of blue and a shade of red, which is this pink. And I'm still playing with this palette knife this morning, just as an easy way to get some paint down on the page. Again, working free and loose, not at all worried about where any of this is going. These are the very early layers. And we're just getting color down on the page. And I'm just moving them around. You don't need to move them around, but the moving them around just allows me for some easier access in the small space that I'm working in. And there's something that adds simplicity to our work when we use the principle of creative constraints, which actually says that we're more creative. We're more creative when we have constraints. So, color choice and limiting our palette to 2 or 3 colors plus black and white is a constraint. You can mix a lot with 3 colors plus black and white. So, thinking about what constraints can you create that are going to help your choices be a lot simpler as you're creating and going forward. So color can be a constraint. We're also using size, right? We're using size as a constraint here as well. All righty. Let's see. Let's get some of this pink on here. And I think what I want to do is maybe do a little different mark making on here. I'm definitely going to want to go to the other side of my studio and grab a stencil using my handy dandy creative wedge. And I've just put a little bit of that pink down here, and I'm just dipping the side of that wedge in there, and it makes some really nice marks. A different way to get some color down on the page. A little more pink there. So, looking at your tools differently, how can you use them in a way maybe that you hadn't thought about to put color down, to make some different marks? This is that opportunity for what I love to talk about is deep play, right? Deep play. For me, this is play, to be able to just sit here, to put color down on the page with no destination in mind. I think where we get caught up and hung up and where our inner critic gets in the way at these early stages is when we're in the stage of I'm trying to create something. And it's what I love about mixed media is the opportunity to I'm just here to create. And something magic will evolve. I don't know what that's going to be yet, but something's going to develop here if I just stay in trust of the creative process and be playful about it. Something will come out. I have a gentleman that I work with, and he gets very hung up on the image in his head and not being able to translate the image in his head to the canvas in the way that he wants. And it's where a lot of us get stuck, right? A lot of us get stuck in this got crazy hair this morning, in this feeling of perfectionism and that it has to look a certain way instead of just to let it unfold and evolve. these are so fun. So already I'm really loving where they're going. I'm enjoying the playfulness here of just simply putting this color down on the paper. And I am going to walk to the other side of my studio and grab a stencil. So bear with me. And so when you think about your word of the year, I want you to think about how you're going to support that. How are you going to live that? Ooh, these look fun. They may be too big, but we'll see. And our weather here in Colorado has been so crazy. A week ago, it was like minus 15 degrees outside, and this morning it's 44 degrees outside, but the snow is coming back today. So I'm kind of liking these. So this is just a die cut of some letter shapes, and they make a great stencil, and I'm feeling like I want to bring some white back into this. So I'm actually going to take a little bit of gesso on my palette here and see if I can find a makeup sponge in my stash here. Just gonna dab, 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 not get too much paint on that. And I'm just not even caring about all the letters going across all the cards here. Letters make amazing shapes, right? We talked about that ICOS and how, and there's some numbers on here as well. And this is just from a die cut machine. And again, I don't need to be able to read the letters, but it's fun to just get some of these patterns on here. And it was just cut in a manila folder, right? A manila folder. So it gets a little sticky. It's not meant to last forever, but I'm having fun with it for now. Look, got some pink in there, so we'll add some of that pink maybe. And as soon as we add that white on top of that black and those bright colors, we can see things are really starting to pop out quite a bit. So I got a few more here that can use that white. And I'm working across all of them, right? Working across all of them, which makes the whole process go a little bit faster. Again, this just teaching ourselves to be really loose and free. With color, with paint, it's just paper and paint. It's not the end of the world. And working small on these little small index cards, we don't become as attached. And so anytime that we can play and not become attached to the outcome ultimately starts to teach us what our own creative voice is, what our favorite prompts are, the favorite directions. So powerful way to play. Plus, I love Oracle decks and sets of cards. I have tons of sets of cards on the bookshelves over there. And yet I love creating my own with words, concepts, emotions that are important to me. Okay, so these are looking super fun. So I'm going to think about them for just a second, decide where I want to go. I haven't put any of that blue paint on there. I love that I can kind of see all the colors. They're looking pretty messy, which is how life kind of feels a lot of the time, is messy. And I'm like, do I want to neaten them up? I'm not going to add collage on these because I'm going to collage the Sacred Circle designs onto the back of these, which will make them a little bit stronger. Might whiten up some of those edges a little bit. But I love that black gesso. It just creates this really fun grungy look. I also really love adding metallics to the black gesso. It really pops and stands out a lot. So I've got a piece of sequin waste here, which is, or you could use bubble wrap is great for making circles as well. And so I'm going to keep playing with with the stencils here. And I am going to come in with some of my favorite copper. Well, let's try this one. This isn't my favorite copper, but this is the first one that I grabbed. I think this one's pretty transparent, so we'll see how it's going to show over the paint, but I love the shininess of metallics and how they start to stand out. They do tend to be very transparent and not super opaque. I have one from Nova Colors that's one of the more opaque. I have a beautiful opaque gold and copper. I tend to use copper in my art a lot, so this is another place, where we start to think about what are the colors that I'm drawn to over and over. Like, I was so surprised in my own journey this month about how much I just stayed in the primary colors, where normally I like a lot of different colors, but there was something about the primaries for this end of year reflection journal that felt like the right direction to go, and I just sort of intuitively picked them every day. I didn't intentionally pick them. And so again, this is all that part of that self-trust, right? That self-trust that we need to learn to develop as we grow as artists. All right. Does anyone have any fun plans for the New Year's? I don't know that I've ever been like a big New Year's Eve celebration, need to stay up late kind of gal. Even when I was young, was never something that was super important to me, probably because I am such an early bird and always have been. Definitely not a night owl. All right, getting some of that copper down on here. And if you really want colors to pop and you're struggling to get them to pop, if you paint a layer of white down first through your stencil and then come back with your color over the top of that, you can really brighten things up. I love the sheer copper. I might just even add that. It's this beautiful, beautiful shiny copper. So again, these are fun, they're messy. So I have some decisions to make. I know I'm going to put the Sacred Circle designs on the back side. I want to think about, am I going to have my words on the painty side or on the Sacred Circle side? Where are they going to be easier to read and to see? But mostly I'm just in the fun and the play of painting with these. Still see some of that oil pastel which is on there. And the fun things about these is that, there's no finished, right? There's no like perfect ending to any of this. And I definitely think I want to come in with some of this teal that I've been so obsessed with lately. And I'm going to add that with this little tiny brayer that I love. And I'm going to sneeze, so I'm going to mute myself. Excuse me, it would be loud to sneeze right into the microphone. Okay, so I'm going to come just right in here and just see what we can do, just rolling on some of that paint. I love working with this little brayer. I struggled with brayers until I finally found this little one, and it was part just of an inexpensive set that I got on Amazon. But I love the texture that it creates. It doesn't create complete coverage. Don't want to cover up all that gorgeous copper paint. So that blue just feels like it's starting to pull them together quite a bit. So again, starting to find the different ways to add marks that are fun and meaningful for you. So my friend Andrea has a wonderful set of mixed media prompts that she sells at a Work of Heart Studio.com. Jody Ohl has some great prompts in some of her books and classes on abstract art about how to get pieces started. And I have learned so much from other artists about ways to just get these things going, to move quickly through the layers, to get to a place where I'm really happy with them. Just cleaning off that brayer on my newsprint. My newsprint is getting very full here. Soon it's going to be time to pull that off maybe and use it for some collage paper as well. And let's see, maybe I'm going to come in and just do a little scribing, even pushing back some of that blue to some of the colors that are underneath, just playing and exploring and seeing what is happening. You can see I'm pushing back to what's underneath. Usually you have to kind of do this fast, and I'm not working that fast. I have to do it fast because my paint dries so quickly here. So some of this I can see is already too dry. Sometimes we can go all the way back to those under layers. So I'm happy with where these are going. So if you're just joining us live this morning, good morning, welcome. If you're watching the replay, thank you so much for being here. It means the world to me to have people coming and watching this fun series where I am just playing and painting in my PJs. I was down here before 6 this morning, my time, just playing. I have a girlfriend coming to play today, and I was finishing up a journal that I made for her for Christmas. So again, just letting the paint do its own thing, having a lot of fun playing. But this started because I had made a comment, excuse me, last year to a friend about loving to paint in my PJs, and she had commented how it was a great thing to share. And so I think last year on New Year's Day, painting in your PJs on Zoom, which was fun. It is my happy place down here in my studio for. So coming in, thank you so much, Kay. I love doing it. I have so much fun doing it. And what a better way to start my own day than with this hour or so of time. And I know some of you participated in my December Radiant Retreat, and we did some similar cards to these, working on tags instead of the index. Super fun, just such an easy way to work. And in that program, we create a set of cards around my 6 pillars of a radiant life. It is not too late to join me for the January Radiant Retreat. And I am just coming in here with a black Stabilo marks all and adding some marks. These are water soluble, so I'm gonna maybe hit them with a little matte medium, put a nice layer over the top all of this and just see what happens. So I'm just coming back, outlining some of these shapes, adding some more shapes and marks. Just continuing to play, just putting a little bit on each one. All right, so these are feeling pretty good. Let's see what happens. Some matte medium on these. Again, just coming in with that palette knife and just going right over the top marks. Oops, you can't see. You can see the matte medium, just like the water does, activates the stabilo and creates these beautiful black lines on here. But when it dries, we get this nice sort of permanent surface on here. You can kind of spread them, or if you go fast, you can actually keep it pretty much where it is, but the water tends to more. It's amazing how much I use matte medium. It is definitely one of those must-have supplies in my studio. Loving the colors it's going. And I can feel that I'm getting to that point where I'm not sure what's next. I feel a little bit like maybe they're in that messy middle and I need to figure out to sort of calm them all down or bring a little more cohesiveness to the designs. So that might mean just coming in with more gesso over the top or a solid color of one of the colors I've used to bring that back, maybe even a little more of the blue, or maybe not. Maybe I like the little bit of sort of messy creativeness. Thank you, Kay. I appreciate that. Hey, Mom. Glad you're here. Welcome. I also have mine from the Radiant Retreat on my art table. I think this set is going to go on my work desk. I have sets of these cards all over the place. In fact, I did a big studio cleanup on Monday, and it felt so good to get everything cleaned up. And I had so many of these cards that I'd created across time that I actually ended up tossing some that were no longer serving me or that I wasn't looking at on a regular basis. And I'm a big fan of either repurposing our art or letting go of our art. I have no qualms about tossing things, canvases, journals that I know I'm not going to use again, that I'm not going to look through. I have some that feel really sacred and important to keep, and others that were just play and experimentation. And I'm not a big fan of too much clutter in my studio. And so it felt really good to just clean out and get rid of stuff. I also boxed up all the journals that I had worked in, completed, created over the last year. Found a bunch from some of Ali's challenges and programs that I had made last year, and I filled like a banker's box full of books that I had worked in last year. And it's, when you're working in journals, you might sometimes be thinking, what did I do this year? What do I have to show for it? And I started flipping through some of the work I'd done, and there was a lot. Okay, these are feeling pretty fun now. Okay, so pretty happy with where these are at the moment. So I'm going to set them aside to get completely dry. And I am going to work on my sacred circles and figuring out how to trim those up to fit the backside of the cards. So I shared at the very beginning that we have a wonderful program called the Mindful Patterns membership. And in that membership, we share original sacred circle designs created by my son Connor. They're not going to go into a book, Mom. They're going to become like a deck of oracle cards, personal deck of oracle cards. I did think about hinging them together with some paper tape and creating an unfolding book. So that would be another idea for how to use them. So in the Mindful Patterns membership, we are focused on using art and creative process to create relaxation, calm, and more mindful presence. And so these are some of the ones that I have colored over the last couple of months. I have a lot that I have added Zentangle patterns to as well. But for today, I chose mostly ones that are colored pencil, maybe some gel pen. This is a combination of both. And I love the affirmation on this one. I am willing to believe that things will always work out, even when they don't feel like it. You can see I'm using these a lot to play with different color palettes as well and to test colors. This one was done with watercolors, and so because it was with watercolors, I don't want to put and gel pen, those colors aren't going to stay permanent. So I probably won't use that one. And so I'm looking at these, thinking about which are the ones that are sort of matching already my colors. Definitely loving these oranges, feeling like that one really matches. That one kind of matches. And so people always ask, what do you do with all the things that you create? I think you have to be willing to let them go, be willing to let them go. So that one feels like it matches. That one's got some of the same pinks and blues. Not sure about the greens. That one kind of matches some of our earth tones. So I'm going to start figuring out how do I want to cut these up. So this is a great way to repurpose your own art. So I am going to cut these up in order to create the backside. And I want to see how they're going to fit on here. And if I want to, do I just want to take the center? Is it okay if there's some white edges around these? So I really like the centers the best. So I'm just kind of using my cards that I created to sort of mark off. And I'm going to just take a pencil. My index cards is going to be a little messy on the other side. These cards are still wet. I'm getting matte medium all over everything. I am not a perfectionist, not super big fan of using a ruler for a lot of things, but these index cards are just the standard 3x5 index cards. You could use a paper cutter to do this. I didn't have my paper cutter is huge and way on the other side of the studio. So I am just going to hand cut these using my little cutting mat here and a ruler to just kind of guide this along. I've got a nice sharp blade in here. You could also tear these. You could mark them, use a bone folder and tear them if you like kind of the nice torn deckled edges look. I'm left-handed, so you can see I'm cutting everything the way that works for me. So I find when I'm teaching that people that are right-handed usually need to do the opposite of what I'm doing, not the same thing that I'm doing. So make sure that you're using your tools and supplies and turning your page in a way that works for you, in a way that works for you. That pencil line was really crooked. All righty. And now I'm gonna measure the center of this because where did my pencil go? It's amazing how things can get lost on even a small space. So I'm just gonna kind of put a mark where the center of that is there. I'm gonna use one of the lines on my cutting mat to just make sure I'm getting a straight line right down the center. Like I said, I'm not a perfectionist, but I do want these to more or less line up on the back side. And they actually look so pretty when they're cut. Like it amazes me that they're beautiful in the wholeness and integrity of the sacred circle designs, but they're also beautiful when they're cut. So this is going to make my cards a lot stiffer than they would be on the index card if I wasn't using this cardstock. I might even glue two index cards together or work on something, add more collage paper to one side of the index cards, which will help them just last a little longer, be a little stronger. Kind of liking that little bit of white space on there. I get to decide what direction I want these to go. And this will help me also start to decide which side are my words going to go on as I am creating this deck. And I think I'm just going to use a glue stick to adhere them together. But I'm going to cut out one of my words here. If you like things to be neat and even, you could again use the X-Acto knife and the ruler or use a paper trimmer. I never want to cover up the centers. I always like the centers, but I'm kind of liking openness here in this sort of, floral. This looks like a design that is very open. But I'm also thinking about what if those sacred circle designs stayed as they are and all the words went on to this side? I'm not sure yet. I'm not sure yet. So this is the part where I get to decide, right? Where I get to just stay curious. These don't feel complete yet, and I'm not sure where I want to go with them. This is one of those projects that takes a little bit longer to create and can easily be done over several days' time, where you could paint the cards one day or even just put that base layer down and some marks one day and then a different day continue to build up those marks, right? Continue to build up those marks. Allow the project to unfold in its time, not necessarily your time, right? In its time, not your time. All right. So just noticing some of these, the colors match better than others. And even though these are already colored and have a lot on them, I still have the opportunity to go back in here and add more color, add more paint. All right, so I'm going to go right across the middle here and mark some lines. I want to get as much of that design in there as I can. Again, using these nice straight lines on the cutting mat to help me get them more or less straight. My daughter is making a journal for her partner, and we were trying to figure out what paper to put inside of it. And I'm like, oh, this one would really work. And you could just tear the pages to the right size. And she's like, I don't know what it is about you guys and your torn pages. So she definitely doesn't like the torn pages, likes things to be a little more neat. But I can't cut straight with a pair of scissors to save my life. And so, from my perspective, it was actually harder to cut things straight unless I'm using a paper cutter. Right. I'm not sure I got that one quite where I wanted it this time. But it's all going to work out fine, and I'm probably going to want to add some paint to the edges of these to make them feel a little bit more finished. And the ruler just helps me keep the edge of the edge neat. Okay, this is looking good. It gives me a guide so that I get a nice straight cut on there. That ended up being a little bit short, so maybe I'm going to go this way and then trim it up. Definitely was better when I just used that pencil to trace the outside of that, because I'm just eyeballing this, right? I'm just eyeballing it, so I need to trust my own eyeballs. All right. So this is the fussy part. Again, I'm probably not going to finish these in one sitting, but I feel like I have a really good start on them. And I will come back for tomorrow's session and show how I will finish all of this up. Oh, I love that. Yes, it could absolutely um, get messy, but is a really fun project to do with your grandchildren. I love that, Kay, and especially because it's just paint and paper. It's a really simple way for them to play, and maybe even a fun way to use up some of your sacred circle designs that you have colored. All right, I think I got that more or less straight on there. Yeah, super simple. I love projects that are fun and simple. And with kids with these, it would be fun to add, could be words, could be some collage images. As I'm looking at these, I've been wanting to do some stitching lately. Might be fun to come in, depending on how old the kiddos are, and add some stitching. So I might do that tomorrow, is add some stitching to these before I put them down. So I love stitching on paper. So I love where this project is going. Has a long way to go, but I feel like I have a good start on it. And you guys don't need to sit here and watch me cut paper, but I will be back tomorrow for our final live stream of the week to show how I would finish these off. But I really am happy with where they are so far. Fun, easy to create, and I'm so happy when I'm starting my day with painty fingers, So thank you so much for joining me. This is Dr. Minette Riordan. This is Painting in Your PJs with Minette, and we're working on creating a set of personal oracle cards that will help us to live out our word or phrase of the year. I'll be back with part two tomorrow, which is Thursday, December the 29th. Until then, thank you so much for joining me live. Have an amazing rest of your day. Hope you're taking time off during the holidays to relax, play, and create. I will see you all soon. Bye bye.